If your track doesn't groove, it won't make people move. This tutorial is about groove, why your track may lack it and how you can fix it in 4 steps. We'll start beginner and go pro, step by step. Let's start with a super simple loop, just a 4 on the floor kick, offbeat head and the snare on the 2 and the 4. Let's jump into the project. So we have a kick, clap, head and bass sub channel for now, for the first part. So we'll create this very basic loop. Punch in a kick every quarter note, get your kick going. That's our kick for now. Let's be real quick and add in the other elements. Clap on 2 and the 4, head on every offbeat position, which is the 0.3 position in your quarter notes. So let's add the bass line. Alright, so we just hit a B on every quarter, and then in the end we alternate it to an A, which is just a little fill note there. Okay, so that's what we end up with. Now we have our basic beat going, so now we'll make it a lot groovier. Layering, increased complexity, syncopation and timing of snare, like smaller snare hits on very groovy positions. So we need to find out what are even groovy positions aside a drum groove. I think it's a combination of having something that's very stable, very like basic, and then having syncopated elements here and there. Okay, so let's dive into syncopation, but before we do that, we'll create a really nice offbeat bounce. And that offbeat bounce, we will do it with this open head here. So the open head really, like the 909 classy open head, that's like where your head will start nodding from. So and it's a very like common groovy head that's being used in nearly every house genre. Okay, so listen to it now. Alright, so that's already pretty interesting, because if you pay closer attention to what your head is doing, we didn't shift it anything to the left or to the right. We didn't make things per se syncopated or groovier in the classic sense, but just through loudness also comes groove, because if you make things louder at a certain position, the impact there and therefore the groove will be more pronunciated. Without having it shifted to the left or to the right already is making the whole track a lot groovier. And just pay attention to this. You can definitely hear like the clap is very pronunciated, but if we add the head layer, it's getting really like you really have that flowy feeling. Mixing is also groove, or loudness is also groove. I mean, like in the terms of velocity, this is very obvious because, well, you add different velocity curves, like we will do here in a head layer as well. But also for like your elements. So if you think I'm lacking like a groove on the off head, maybe your off head is just too quiet, or you need a layer with a 909 head. Okay, so let's continue here. Now we'll add some ghost notes here and there with those 2 heads, and then we'll make the whole drum groove even more complex. So this could be just a layer on the kick. Let's talk about groovy positions and ungroovy positions. Groovy positions are the 2nd and the 4th 16th note, okay? So those are also the positions that will get swung in a 16th swing. So if you have a groove pool here, and we all have that, and you type in swing, you will get those different swing parameters here, okay? And there's swing 8th 71, and the swing 8th, that's the one that you would probably use for 8th note material, otherwise it won't work. And the 16th you will use for 16th based grids. So this, for example, will affect only the 4th and the 2nd 16th positions. So if I have this open head here, what a swing will do, if we would apply it here, like just double clicking it, lowering into the groove pool, and apply this swing 16th, 64. So now you cannot see it because it's working like non-destructive, so it won't like shift it visually. But if you hit it here, you can see now this 4th, 16th head got shifted to the right, and that's called syncopation. And that's something that will happen most of the times with most swings only to the 4th and the 2nd 16th note. So this groove does not necessarily has to be programmed in by your groove pool. You can also do this manually. So if you hit in a note, and then you can just manually like give it more or less swing. So less swing would be closer to the normal edges here, and more swing would be completely here to the right. And that's also like a percentage that's being shown here. So 64 would be a mediocre amount of swing, and 52 would only be a little bit, and the higher the number, the more swing you will have. Alright, so let's do this manually here quick. And the farther you go to the right, the more chunky it will get. Maybe we just dial it back down a little bit. Okay, so and I think this is already enough for this element. So I think going pretty simple here is totally fine for now. Now we have a very strong offbeat with our open head here. So I think we can go back to our closed head and vary the pattern here a little bit. Now we can select all of those and go with swing 64, for example. That is pretty important, that you have kind of the same swing amount for all of your elements. Otherwise, things will not match up equally, and that will not benefit your groove. Definitely, I would recommend to apply the same amount of groove, either manually or through the groove pool, to all of your elements. Now let's see how this sounds. Okay, I don't like this first one here. Also, already sounds pretty solid to me. So we could do even more, but then we need to get the swing here also for this note. So, tuck, tuck. Okay, so now we've applied the double amount of swing to our MIDI notes, because those already had swing. So I go back here and do this manually right here. Okay, sounds good to me. So let's continue with the snare. So snare hits are very classy. Okay, and now we need to add the swing here as well. Okay, let's try to stay a little bit more simple, because we have another snare drum here. And then we can make an interplay between those. Maybe we add here. Okay, and we have another head that we can use. So this one here, I will do kind of a shaker or a 16th based pattern. So we just duplicate all of those, and then, well, now it's gonna be interesting, because you have basically something that's called swing, and then you have also accents. Accents are more volume based, so they're not necessarily timing based, but volume based. We also want to search for a 16th accent here, so I'll just randomly like double click them to load them in the groove pool to be able for us to use them later on here in our groove pool. Let's select them and go with the clave accent, and then I'll just bounce this in here. Okay, so now you can see Nothing about the timing changed, but very drastically the velocities changed. So that's what we expect from an accent. And now we have our accent. And this is just the clave pattern here. So pronounced here, 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 here. Something that you also hear a lot in Afro House, for example. This very pattern right here. But now we also want to make it match to our swing. So still we need to apply our swing 16th, 64th here. Zack. So now we have first the accent and then the swing. So now it will line up with all the other sounds. Maybe we can add like just a snare here. A little bit less velocity. The next part is adjusting the bass, and this is not necessarily something that's only true for bass, but it's true for, I would say, nearly every element that, is sensible to sustain. Okay, so what am I talking about? I'm talking about note length. Note length is nearly equally important as syncopation itself. Up until now, we had this very boring bass and was only playing on the kicks, and it was all the same length. Let's just see what happens if we tighten this up a little bit. Suddenly some of those notes will get bouncier. So now if we shift then maybe. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so this sounds already really groovy to me, if you compare it to the old version here. Okay, so that was only with note length, and now we're going to apply our 16th groove. And let's listen in context. Yeah, that's way better. Okay, so now before we add melodics and the very groovy piano, we will add some loops. Before we head over, make sure to check out the House Academy, because it's out now and there are like a lot of disc grooves and heads and open heads and presets. So basically there's everything you could need to build your own more classic house track in there. We have our drum loop, we go to beats mode and we select this one-shot beat mode here. That's pretty important so we don't have this weird playback. And then we hit Command and A here, somewhere here in this field, and then Command and U, which will quantize everything. So now you can see it has detected some of those transients, but they are not synchronized because we need to switch to 16th grid. Now again, and now every transient here except those ones here, that's something we need to do manually actually, are lining up with our 16th grid. So that's what we want to do in the very beginning. So we're syncing our drum loop and then we syncopate it afterwards. So I guess I just want to loop the first section because here I think could be a little bit weird. Okay, so let's listen to this. Okay, and now we can apply our swing. Oh, you can already hear the difference. Yeah, it's pretty loud. Let's do it without the swing. It's just sounding like it's not belonging inside the track. Like this, it's way groovier. Let's do this with the second top loop. Okay, this definitely has some swing on it. You can see and you can hear it. Here you can hear at this point, listen to this. That's why that's happening if you don't select the one-shot mode here. It's like this krrk, krrk, because it's looping like back and forth to fill the time. Krrk. Okay, so we go to one-shot here. Okay, I think this is working now. Okay, here's already a little bit of difference, but I think that's fine. Okay, so let's apply our groove here. 64. Make them a little bit quieter, and then we can group those, call them top loops, and now we'll add an EQ in. I think we can get rid of some of the lower mids here. Alright, so let's add in the third top loop. Alright, here we are. Okay, well that looks like a little bit problematic candidate, to be honest, because this is such a long signal, but we'll try it. Select all, quantize, go to one-shot mode. Actually, I guess you know that, but in one-shot mode you can also tighten loops up a little bit. So if something has too much reverb on it or something, you can just go down with this number here and it will tighten up the loop. Up until you can barely hear like the tail anymore. Okay, we need to go down in volume here. But this is already synchronized, so quantized to our 16th grid. That's fine. So now we go and apply our groove. Maybe I just want to dial back the length a little bit. Okay, so without our top loops, and that's with our top loops. A little bit loud. They just like act as like a filler that makes tracks a little bit more professional. Cool. Okay, so that's it about like all of the drum stuff that we had, and now we're going to take care about the melodic scheme. Let's add this piano riff to our track. We create a MIDI clip, and now we have our scale of B minor here. I've pre-selected it here. I want to build like a jazzy triad, which is in the root, our root note. Then we have our third, minor third. And then we have our octave right here, but we don't want to use the octave, we want to have the minor seventh here. And now we're making this interplay between the right hand and the left hand in a way. So this would be like of a piano player would be the right hand, and then we need like a lower register note here. So it's like alternating. So that's what I'm imagining here. Okay, so we just copy over this chord, and this one will be kind of the same throughout our theme here, but we alternate the top note, and we go to the F sharp, which is the fifth. So okay, so this would be the pattern if we just copy it over, but I think we can do a little bit better than this. So we delay the chord here, for example, and here. Okay, we can copy this. Okay, now we just need to apply some groove here. Swing 64, and here as well. Alright, so that's it. Let's summarize this real quick before we wrap it up. First, we had some basic groove elements, solid kick, solid clap, solid off-hat. We've added layers, snares, head layer, sounds, and a closed 16th based head layer, which we gave some accent notes. Then in the next step, adjusting the bass. So volume, second we had syncopation, and the next one was note length. So note length is also really important for groove, and this is not only true for our sub bass that we've adjusted the lengths on, but also on heads, especially on synthesizers, on guitars, if you think of like strummed funk guitars of that. And then in the very end we've added some top loops, and the important thing is here, just make sure that you apply the same swing or groove to all of your sounds and loops, so they really interact with each other and they don't play against each other. And that's we did this by quantizing everything, going to the beats one-shot mode, so there are no artifacts, and then again applying the groove later on. So that's what we did with all of those top loops, and then I really rushed through the grand piano theme, which is some fill riff based grand piano stuff. Really, this should be checked out in a much longer session. So thanks for watching. My name is Yannek, and yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.